Hello and welcome to Everyday Medicine. I'm Dr. Luke and I'd like to thank you for joining me on this podcast series where we share conversations with colleagues and explore their special interests in medicine, as well as bringing insights, ideas and advice for your medical practices. In this episode, we talk with an expert on artificial intelligence and medicine. But before starting, for Australian audiences, listening does give you eligibility for your CPD, so log in and add this as an activity. You may also consider journaling, reflection, and adding to the review and performance section in your CPD. Well, artificial intelligence is a wide-ranging branch of computer science concerned with building smart machines capable of performing tasks that typically require human intelligence. It's widely accepted that artificial intelligent computer systems will be used extensively in medical sciences. Common applications are likely to include illness diagnosis, end-to-end drug discovery and development, improving communication between physicians and patient, the transcribing of medical documents, including history note-taking, as well as writing prescriptions. And it's probable that as technology advances, doctors and allied health professionals will be replaced in certain roles by artificial intelligent computers. While artificial intelligence is not new, it's been an important enabler within the technology industry, built into our handheld phone computer devices, enabling new business innovation, including web search content recommendations, product recommendations, targeted advertising, and autonomously driven vehicles. Well, humans reap the benefits of artificially intelligent systems every day. So in medical practice, there are many advantages offered from embracing artificial intelligence, with the expectation that diagnostic accuracy and patient care will be the beneficiaries, whilst providing an excellent second opinion or co-collaborator with the physician, increasing medical efficiency and confidence in applying treatment strategies. Well, I was curious to learn more about the likely trends this technology might bring to health management, and was fortunate to meet Anders Sorman Nielsen at a recent medical conference where he provided our audience with a thought-provoking, entertaining and informative lecture on the future, including the possible integration of AI in medicine. As a global futurist and innovative strategist, Anders gave us a wonderful glimpse into a new world. Anders has degrees in both law and political science, as well as an MBA, has keynoted at TEDx in the United States and Australia, and shared stage with Hillary Clinton. He was nominated to the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leaders in 2015 and has authored 3 books, including Seamless, Think Funky, and Digilog, as well as contributing to the Aftershock edited by John Schroeter. And noting how meticulously researched and energetic his lecture was at our conference, I could strongly recommend Anders to anyone seeking an excellent keynote speaker. He'll provoke searching questions and prompt some deep thinking, possibly inspiring a new and creative approach to how you conduct business and prepare for the future. Well, in this podcast, I was keen to explore the possible place of artificial intelligence, AI, in medicine, including how it could impact diagnostic assistance, drug discovery, provide virtual health assistance, enhance personalised medicine, as well as improve robot-assisted surgery. And other areas of interest extend to its place in influencing medical education and training, clinical trial optimisation, natural language processing for health records, and how it may assist in both the sequencing of genomes and coping strategies for those requiring mental health support. So it was a great privilege to speak to Anders today. Please welcome him to the podcast. So, Anders Sorman Nielsen, thank you for making the time to come and join me in Everyday Medicine. Anders, I was, I think, very privileged to hear you give a beautiful keynote speech at the Grand Hyatt on AI, and particularly AI in medicine. And, I was hugely impressed. And you probably regret me coming up to the table and grabbing you and asking if you'd be part of this podcast because you're very busy. I know you're a global futurist, an innovation strategist, and you've done TEDx keynotes. You've shared the floor with Hillary Clinton. You've written 3 books. Somehow, I don't know how you've done that. You've got a degree in law, political science, that MBA. I don't know how you fit it all in, actually, Anders. Just tell us a little bit, before we talk about like the 10 key impacts of AI in medicine as you've described in the lecture that we had in Sydney. Could you tell us a little bit about your background? How did you get into this very exciting field, influencing lots of business leaders in the way you are in terms of future planning? Just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So now futurism is a little bit more of an accepted field that, is not going to get you lots of laughter at a cocktail party when you describe yourself as a futurist. But I guess I've had my own business for now close to 20 years. And even when I started, the idea of futurism wasn't really something that was on my radar. It's been a little bit of an evolution. I think the first time after I, completed my law degree and my political science degree, and I started up my own business, a lot of the focus was on socio-economic trends. So there's a tool, a diagnostic tool, planning tool that we used a lot at the time called STEEP, socio-cultural, technological, economic, environmental, and political trends. And I guess the socio-economic, socio-cultural trends, demographic trends is something I was focused on a lot when I had started up the business in my mid-20s. So it was sort of decoding Generation Y and millennials and all that kind of stuff for large corporates from both the talent engagement and also sales and marketing perspective. So that sort of was the origin story. I think having left the law firm Clayton Utz at a fairly young age and feeling pretty disengaged with work and their lack of technology, I realized that there was something a little bit different about millennials and how we approach work. And after my article clerkship there, decided that law wasn't for me. I'd been asked to, I think, compare two different years worth of the Therapeutic Goods Administration Act. And of course, my question as a 23-year-old was, isn't there a piece of software that can do this instead? Yes. And they said, yes, there is, but we like to put you through your paces and get you to do the menial and the mundane. That's where you earn your stripes. So I thought that was a really archaic approach to work. So initially in Think, in my company, THINQUE, so Think with a funny spelling, there was a big focus on demographic trends and the different generations in the workplace. And I guess over time that's evolved. Then, one of the other big trends in the sort of mid to late 2000s, the noughties, was social media. The arrival of Facebook and everything else in the workplace and from a marketing and sales perspective. So then clients started asking me to decode that. And then, I found with the rise and the increasing sort of popularity of TED Talks and the TED Conference, which, I've been a member of TED Global for a while. A lot of my clients asked me to start hosting these thought leadership and futuristic events for them and started introducing me as a futurist back in the late 20noughties. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I haven't even chosen this title, but it's sort of, I guess it stuck with me. Other people named me. And then I added a global executive MBA later on and with a focus on strategy. And so, probably back 10 to 14 years ago, we started doing strategy development, scenario planning, long-range planning for our clients as well. So that's a little bit of an evolution.
Well, it's kind of, you've picked, I think, or fall into an amazing career, because it seems to me like the way the internet and now AI has taken over business and pushing the world, it's like a locomotive rampaging forward. And I'm a dinosaur on the end of the baby boomers, and I have to get my boys to help me with all sorts of gadgets and things. But I recognise I have to be trained up. And you open my eyes up to a lot of things in that talk about, if we don't actually embrace AI, we're going to be left behind. Just like we have to embrace electronic banking and all those other things that we've eventually taken on over the last 20, 30 years. But, it's something that I don't think anybody in the modern world can really shut out if they want to be successful and run an efficient business. So, I'm extremely grateful for your place in Australia lecturing us. Can you talk a little bit about the impacts of AI as you see it in medicine? Like that, like starting off with one of the first points was diagnostic assistance. Just tell us a little bit about how you see that gaining relevance in medical practices.
Yeah, and I guess maybe just to preface this with a couple of ideas just on your reflections as well, which is that, digital medicine, digital health, digital nutrition, these are all components of, moving from sort of reactive sick care to more proactive healthcare. And humans tend to only adopt new technologies when we really have to. Two good examples of that. One is actually a medical example, is of course telemedicine, which was around way before the pandemic. But no one was using it. But then it became a convenient way when technology was our only lifeline to actually deliver advice and still be able to see patients. And the other one that I think we're all thankful for is, e-signatures. E-signatures, again, were around before the pandemic. But when the most, human touch became the digital contactless touch, that was when the technology reached its, productivity plateau, in a sense. If you look at something like Gartner's hype cycle, these are technologies that maybe once upon a time were super hyped and then nothing happened and a pandemic happened, and, we deploy these technologies at scale. And certainly AI has been hyped for a number of years now as well, but we see in medicine and across the board that AI is now actually being put to the test and being implemented across a variety of spaces in medicine. So it's a little bit of a preface and a little bit of a preview to what we're about to discuss. But we can tackle these in a sort of chronological order, or we can I can.
Well, sure, whatever you feel. Tell me that the QR code was developed by Japanese. Was that part of your lecture? It was a Japanese development, but it was sort of not really utilised. No one kind of understood what to do with the QR code. I think you mentioned that. It's an incredible thing that we're all using now, and it just all of a sudden, like, it's just taken for granted. But they developed it, but no one kind of knew what to do with it. It often seems to be like inventions are well ahead of their utility. It takes a while.
Yeah.
But you reach that tipping point that Malcolm Gladwell talks about, that everyone sort of engages with something. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Another great technology that the pandemic sort of put to the test. And maybe people were just looking for desperately for a solution. I think there were many attempts in Australia, because the QR code had been well adopted in Asia, but in Australia, I think there was this resistance to QR codes to the point where brands were trying to get their own logos into a QR code, and there were teddy bears and smiley faces and all sorts of things, emojis being launched inside of QR codes to no avail, because Australians still refuse to adopt the QR code. But of course now we know what to do with them. And it's a bit more seamless too, because then the hardware catches up. So now, if you scan any QR code on your iPhone, it will recognize the URL and go straight to it. It used to be they had to have an app, and it was a bit clunky.
Yes, it knows what to do now. Yeah. So do you think, like, when we start with diagnostic assistance, where do you see AI and diagnostic assistance? Like, I suspect that we're going to be seeing a change in radiology. Interventional radiologists will be doing their thing, but we may not see so much of the primary radiologist might actually be a machine reading it. And pathology, I can see similarly, maybe even dermatology. One of my dermatology colleagues said that when they at a conference, AI seemed to be better at picking the diagnosis. Of course, it can't biopsy a skin lesion, but I guess it can dispense medication with an electronic script. It can do that. But just tell us a bit about that. Where do you see that leading us in the next 5, 10, 15 years?
Yeah, well, we're already seeing that AI is playing a key role in diagnostic assistance, and there's a few good examples, even some studies out of MIT and Harvard. I think one of the most famous ones was looking at cancer diagnosis, where they put an AI and humans to the test. And the study combined humans and AI in a collaborative manner. That's when it really got interesting. So in the study out of MIT and Harvard, there was cancer diagnosis by AI. 7.5% of the diagnoses were incorrect. The humans actually outperformed the AI. Only 3.4% were incorrect diagnoses. But what was really interesting, when you put the two together, all of a sudden you move to a correct diagnosis rate of 99.5%, and only 0.5% were incorrect.
Right. Okay.
Now, the interesting thing was that even though the humans outperformed the AI at the time, that 90% of the incorrect human diagnoses were picked up by the AI. So again, the AI actually played a large role in diagnostics.
Was that radiology? And are we talking about a radiological study there? Was it?
I believe so. Yeah, I think it's available online. So I think go and do a quick fact check, but go and check out the study online. I mean, of course, Geoffrey Hinton, the godfather of AI, made this prediction back in 2016 that that you should stop training radiologists because machine learning will do it so much better, and that hasn't really happened either. Oftentimes we overhype the impact of technologies in the short term, as Roy Amara said, and we underestimate their impact in the longer term. But there's a radiologist, Curtis Langlotz at Stanford University, says that the case really is that AI is not going to replace radiologists, but radiologists who use AI most likely will replace the radiologists who don't. And I think this is core to the sort of the diagnostic saga, which is that your clients, your patients expect doctors to use the best technologies. I mean, it's similar for me. When I do my annual or biannual skin check, knowing what I know about AI, I don't trust a doctor who doesn't use AI or digital scans.
That's a good point. Yeah, and that could become a legal requirement. In endoscopy, we're looking about colonoscopies. We're looking at colonic polyp detection, and there's a tool now that's come in which it's quite a bit expensive, so not everyone's implemented it just yet, but I'm sure the price will come down. But I think that's going to be, it's mandatory, you have to have that if you're doing colonoscopy, because it'll become an industry standard. So that's interesting. So it'll probably enhance our diagnosis rather than replace us. Do you think that humans will trust, let's suppose it was just a machine, do you think humans would trust a machine diagnosis over man diagnosis, male, female, human diagnosis?
Yeah. There may be a time that we do it. I mean, there are other instances where we trust technology to get it right. We already trust AI to fly our airplanes, to fly, to get us up and down the elevator, to decide who comes in and out of Australia at the border.
Yes.
I think you'll always want someone to be a human interface to the results, though. So, I've used a few of the apps available today to scan for a new birthmark or a little change in summer spots or freckles, but I don't stop there, right? It's
you've got nice Scandi skin, Anders. You're going to...
Yeah. Although I burn in Australia, sadly, so like so many of us, I don't. It's not like I take the picture, upload it via the app, and then sort of rest on my laurels. I do check it with with my dermatologist and specialists as well. So having had a few
so
melanomas taken out, I'm like I go and check quite regularly. So
well, that's very sensible. So that's diagnostic assistance. What about the expedited drug discovery? We're using AI to sort of sift through lots of molecules, looking for things that might work in relation.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think this is more on the pharmaceutical side of things and getting to approvals and crunching large data sets. Even finding, by, setting machine learning free or setting machine learning free to diagnose a bunch of reports and big data sets. This, no doubt, is going to lead to faster and expedited drug discovery.
Yes.
We're already seeing that AI is able to see new correlations that humans hadn't thought of.
Yes.
And so, no doubt, that's going to impact drug discovery as well.
Virtual health assistance. In Victoria, there's a virtual emergency department, which is seeing upwards of 1,000 people a day now. Now, this is not AI, but there are people, there are doctors that are behind screens that are communicating with people in the homes and ambulance and so forth. And I can see that's become very, very efficient at stopping unnecessary presentations to a quaternary hospital and ambulance ramping and all those sorts of things that are talked about all the time down here in Victoria. And I can see that you could have a bot with infinite patience, like an AI voice, maybe dealing with some of those sorts of inquiries. What do you think about? Is that where we're going to head? Do you think? Like, are we going to have? Again, Malcolm Gladwell talks about this, about AI probably replacing doctors, but not nurses, because nurses have a human touch. What do you think that we're going to be seeing? Doctors are cold-blooded. Do you think you can see, an emergency department full of machines, basically, dealing with at least simple things, being overseen perhaps by some, more senior medical staff? What do you think about that?
Yeah, and it might be a case too of, virtual health assistants speaking to a health assistant that's in the home with the patient.
Yes.
I mean, I just look at my, left hand here, and for those of you listening in, I'm wearing an Oura Ring and a Apple smartwatch or an Apple Watch, and in many ways, I'm already wearing my heart on my sleeve. We've already seen how the Apple smartwatch can, make calls to emergency departments. If I was to take a fall, for example, and I live in a national park here in Sydney, if I was to take a fall and be knocked out, the phone will call the emergency line and give my exact coordinates.
Yeah.
But you could take that a few steps further as well and look at, predictive biomarkers that the Oura Ring, for example, is monitoring for. It might be my sleep quality, or if I've, lived an unhealthy life for a while, or if my gait is, shifting, for example. These are all biomarkers that might be relevant for emergency. So I think the ideal virtual health assistants will be, yes, it will be at the, at the hospital side of things, but also increasingly, including the elderly population, but also the younger, are now monitoring their health all of the time. We're sort of quantifying and digitizing ourselves and getting predictive maintenance experiences from a health perspective as well.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Personalised medicine, customising treatment plans. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So personalised medicine, I think this has always been the holy grail of medicine, based upon, your DNA, your lifestyle.
Yeah.
There's always that sense of, you are and you become, the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yes.
We know that, people who might be obese tend to hang out with other obese people. And so, that's just one example. But personalized medicine might say, hey, these are not just the changes and the drug regime or the mental health plan for you, but maybe these are the sort of lifestyle changes you need to make, or considering the context of a person's life. Are they, what kind of family environment are they in? Is there domestic abuse? What are the other challenges that might apply when you're prescribing a particular drug, or even an app? Is it actually going to work in a person's life? So AI might be able to crunch some other data sets that humans don't think about.
Yes.
In terms of whether there's going to be adherence to the plan that's been prescribed.
I feel that's almost like treading over into the wellness sector, which probably generalised, like medicine as we practice it in Australia is very much, we sort of go along Medicare guidelines, and we don't have a lot of time often with patients, not as much as we should. We probably don't spend as much time concentrating on, some of us, I'm not saying everyone, but much time spending thinking about persons, their diet and their sleep hygiene and their exercise and all those sort of things. I could see that you could certainly have an assistant sort of giving you advice, feedback and so forth. That would make a big difference, perhaps, to a lot of people's lives. What about robot-assisted surgery? And did you ever see the film Prometheus? I can't remember the film. The actress in that, she gets infected with this awful thing, and she realises she's got to quickly get it out of her uterus, and she jumps into this capsule, and the machine does this urgent hysterectomy or something, or cesarean section, pulls this awful alien out of her body, and she jumps free. Can you see that the future will be, we have got robotic devices at the moment, but they're being driven by very competent surgeons. Can you see the future where we will have a robot without a human necessarily there? Undertaking appendectomy, undertaking some of these things, understanding the variant anatomy so that, it'll do this in this case and that in that case. What do you think? Is that the way we're sort of headed? Maybe no surgeon and just a machine?
Yeah, again, it's once maybe our cyber protocols and everything else, and maybe when the internet is fast enough, etc. Again, I think of this as an augmentation tool, at least in the initial stage. I mean, there may be a future where, AI-enhanced robots might be able to make all these decisions themselves based upon, integrating information from various sources such as surgical guidelines, etc. And they might be fully autonomous. I think there's going to be, that's probably more like 20 or 30 years off as opposed to in the next few years. I think there's going to definitely be a, development here where, and we've already seen whether it's the Da Vinci surgeon or other examples of that sort of, man, woman, person, and collaboration with a cobot in a sense. And I think there's already examples now of remote surgery, for example, meaning you can get access to the best, clinicians and the best surgeons on the planet and maybe locations where you're not spoilt with that kind of expertise. So I think you'll see that. And of course, again, this is a lot about this or AI's exponential development is about helping humans do less of the menial and the mundane and helping us do more of the meaningful and the humane. And this includes, freeing us up to focus maybe more on our skills, while hopefully the AI can also assist in surgery by scanning surgical guidelines and, giving us access to, best practice and
picking up an anomaly maybe. Avoiding a complication. Medical education and training, Anders. I can see how AI would be hugely valuable there, hugely valuable in all sorts of ways. I think the way to think about it, and you feel free to add to this as well, but the way I think about it is imagine if, your medical education and training was as immersive or as personalized as your Netflix or Spotify playlist that seems to know your preferences. But, let's take it to the next level of, your particular learning style, your particular, strengths or weaknesses. You add some virtual reality on top of that, personalization of, your various tests as well might test differently or coach you differently depending on your strengths and weaknesses. But virtual reality training as well and immersive worlds will be key. I know that cadavers still play a big role in the world of medical training. But again, while that sort of biofeedback's going to be critical enduringly, I think there's going to be increasing scope as well for being able to do haptic training with virtual reality as well, where you get immediate feedback as well. I think
different sensory inputs.
Yeah, I think that'll be an incredible advance if we have that. You talked a little bit about clinical trial optimization. I guess that's more to do with big pharmaceutical trials. Just tell us a little bit about how you see how that going.
Yeah, well, I think we're learning more and more now that there are differences, there are biases in big data sets. There's certain drugs that get more, prescribed more frequently to, whether it's men or women, or might get underprescribed for certain demographic or ethnic groups, for example. And you just ask yourself, like, how does this all play out when clinical trials happen? Are they truly, representative? How are we selecting? What's the input of genomics and DNA data, for example?
Yeah, you're going to get better quality trials. way better quality trials. Yeah,
exactly.
Not a trial that ends up being reviewed and everyone says, well, it's just, we've got lots of confounders here. So thank you for doing that for the last 3 years, but it's actually really, we can't interpret the outcome. NLP for health records.
Yeah, so natural language processing for health records. A good example of this would be a new technology like Heidi, for example.
Yes, this is amazing. This is an amazing product. Yes.
Yeah. So this can be applied as well to in the shorter term, automating billing, coding, and data management. We know that in Australia, doctors spend 2 to 3 hours a day doing paperwork, and this is not good for patients, nor is it good for doctors and their health. Again, it's the menial and the mundane, right, that gets in the way of the meaningful and the humane.
Yes.
And something like Heidi will transcribe your entire conversation with your patient, help reestablish eye contact between the focus more on empathy as opposed to just note taking. And then, of course, through natural language processing, it can also then translate some of the language and some of the conversation that the medical practitioner has. We know patients forget about 80% of what's said in a consult. So if they get a letter in year 4 English highlighting what was said and recommendations, and a referral is written automatically by something like Heidi, this is very, very valuable. And of course, if every doctor had 2 or 3 hours more capacity to see patients, queues in the system would be a lot shorter as well. So everybody wins.
I think that was I was very grateful for you introducing that program, and someone demonstrated it to me actually at Sydney Airport, and I was really blown away by that. It was extraordinarily effective, and I could see huge application for that, just huge application. That's tremendous. I guess one of the things that would be helpful for us clinically also is to have patients' health records brought together. A lot of patients often have tests done by multiple different pathology and radiology departments, and it's quite difficult sometimes to pull it all together. Like, it would be great if we had a tool that I'm sure there'll be security issues with this and compliance issues and patients giving their consent, but it'd be great if we could just suddenly pull that, like an AI could pull that all together. So, look, actually, these are the tests the patients had, so we don't waste time repeating investigations. Often patients don't know what they've had, and that'd be very helpful for us, particularly when they end up in public hospitals. They often don't know what's happened much in their private health record. I think that.
I think the other thing here is just you sort of referred to the silos of information in various places, and I mean that's confounding for the medical profession and healthcare providers, but of course it's also deeply disappointing for patients, whether it's our health data or whether it's our financial data, our net worth or our debts, whatever important in life in terms of blood, sweat, and tears, and having one single source of truth is critical. For understanding and literacy, whether it's health or finances, and again, being able to centralize that in a cyber secure manner, I think would be beneficial both for patients and clinicians.
I was a little shocked initially, though I shouldn't have been, when you said that 80% of what's actually discussed in a consultation is forgotten. But if I think about when I go and see my accountant, I probably forget 80% of what he says as well. I don't understand the way my businesses are put together. But I think you're right. If we could have a typed, automated, generated typed account, and it gives the patient straight away, this is your diagnosis, these are the medications you're going to take and the side effects, and not that they'll necessarily read it all, but I think that would be a huge advance and improve the clinical outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also personally, I'm very data driven, and try and manage my life in a very data driven fashion. And again, the Oura Ring, for example, tells me about my sleep quality. We know sleep is a big predictor of mental health and physical health.
Yes.
And it gives me little nudges, behavioral nudges, for how I can improve my sleep, and actually follow the follow the advice. Now, if a ring is able to do that, you take that a few steps further and you go, well, if my preventative or predictive medical practitioner who practices healthcare as opposed to sick care, if they also are attuned to that data, etc., and if they have that data, again, it might actually help improve outcomes and and enhance people's quality of life on an everyday basis. So, it's been said that what gets measured gets monitored and can be managed and improved. And I think we're now living in an era that is very, very data driven. And that's a positive.
I agree. Number 9, genomics. Tell us a little bit about your take on that. How do you see
it? It took a long time for humans and a few machines, some time ago to map the human genome. But of course, AI again, genomics is just, it's a series of numbers. It's code. DNA is code. And so AI is able to sequence genomes a lot faster than human experts ever have been. So again, this may play a role in, personalized medicine. Again, like others, I'm not recommending you do this necessarily, but, I've had my genomic sequence done and, on something like 23andMe, for example, and that's given me some predictive insights on, even health, lifestyle factors that might be a positive or negative for me and things to look out for. I find that very, very helpful. But of course, this might also be relevant from a, drug discovery or a prescription perspective as well.
I think you've got to be prepared if there's something a little negative there for appreciating how you're going to cope with that mentally. Like there are some genomics you can do for dementia, for example. And when I read Peter Attia's book, I'm not sure if you've read that, and he talks about that. He talks about a younger executive that gets into a mental funk, really, because her mother's got dementia and she has, not surprisingly, similar sort of genetics. And I could see I was going to do that myself, and I thought better of it. Look, I don't know that I want to. I don't know that I want to know that because I'm just going to get I could get very.
Yeah, you kind of want to sit down with a human to decode it, and again, this comes back to we're still craving the human, the human interface, even if it's a very data-based insight and it's potentially predictive, and you see these correlations. I still find you need an empathetic human to sit down and actually decode the data and the information for you.
Talk you through it differently to a machine. Mental health support, that's the 10th point.
So coping strategies and personalized digital medicine and digital nutrition. An example is my son, Lucian, who's 7 years of age, and our GP, we're going through a divorce at the moment, and the GP also said, hey, he might need some mental health support, maybe go and see a child psychologist. Now, the wait time for that is 9 months in Australia at the moment on average. But she said, hey, in the meantime, why don't you go and utilize some of the very child-centric apps or programs within Headspace, the mental health or mindfulness app. And so he and I now do breath work with Yoda. And that's an example of him, regulating his nervous system, being able to fall asleep faster, and deploying, mindfulness techniques that, have a lot of scientific rigor to them, in a way that's child-centric. Now, this is a form of digital nutrition where, brain chemistry is, or where digital content and digital nutrition is now brain chemistry wrapped in a story. So, digital medicine, digital nutrition can provide really important mental health support in between sessions with your human psychologist. But even if you can't find a human psychologist, there's now Woebot, an AI-esque psychologist that you can talk to. And some of the initial evidence that's coming out of that is that teenagers who've experienced both a human cognitive behavioral therapist and they've also experienced Woebot are anecdotally reporting the same kind of efficacy between seeing a human and seeing the AI. Now, we need more longitudinal studies on that, etc. But I think it's heartening and interesting to study this space. from the perspective of how can we augment mental health support, because, it's not that, not everyone can afford 1 or 2 sessions a week.
No. Or even, medicine itself is expensive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very expensive.
And I think it's this idea that, how do you actually, keep a session, or the value of seeing your medical practitioner, your clinician, your specialist, and how do you augment that at home? Because that's where, where the rubber hits the road.
I think your son's best outcome there is to be with you, Anders. I think you're providing him the nourishment, mate. It's fantastic.
Yes.
Great effort to do that with him. I really makes me tear up a little bit. I think the lack of time I spent with my sons when they were younger, and I really wasn't a great parent in many ways because, being pulled by medicine and stuff. And I really appreciate you sharing that with us. That's a wonderful run through, Anders, of the future. Where are we going to be taken? Like, at times when I think about this stuff, I feel like, I don't know if you watch Black Mirror. It's an incredible series. I love watching it. I mean, you've got to be in the right mood because it's shocking at times, but I sometimes feel like, I don't know the author, I've read about him, but I think he's sort of got these futuristic sort of ideas. Sometimes I think, I'm sort of part of a Black Mirror episode almost when I start thinking about AI and where it's taking us. But I know that's a bit warped. The Black Mirror ideas are a bit warped.
Yeah.
They take us down
some dystopian notions in there.
Very dystopian. Yeah, most of them are very dystopian, aren't they? But one of the things that interests me about you, Anders, is that you've got really your head across all of this. You speak beautifully. You research meticulously. It'd be wonderful to hear you again speak. And give a presentation. We're so lucky to have you here today. You've done 3. I've written 3 books. I don't know how you've had time for that. Seamless Think. Just tell me the third that you got.
Seamless, Think Funky, and Digilog. And co-written another one called Aftershock.
What's that? Tell us about that future one you're going to write.
Well, Aftershock was released during the pandemic. It was really a collaborative work between the top 50 futurists in the world got asked to write a sort of a sequel to Alvin Toffler's, who was one of the futurist forefathers, his book Future Shock, which he'd written 50 years earlier, which came out in 1970. So in 2020, we released this book called Aftershock, in a little bit of an ode to Alvin Toffler, and making all sorts of different projections and, more utopian and dystopian visions. So that was a fun collaboration, and I'm sort of just sitting back and thinking about what my next book might be about. So and of course, the world is moving incredibly quickly, and even in our dialogue now that we've had today, it reminds me that with this voice recording, for example, that now, according to the Mayo Clinic and one of their articles, that you only need 10 seconds of a voice recording now to be able to predict with 89% accuracy for women, 87% accuracy for men, whether they have type 2 diabetes based upon voice biomarkers that are inaudible to the human ear. But because of AI, you're now able to pick up on some of the subtle changes that tell you whether someone's got type 2 diabetes. So
yeah, I didn't see that one coming. That's interesting. Well, as doctors, we might be put out of business eventually. But that's very, very fascinating. And as I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today, and and for being such an excellent speaker, and for sharing your knowledge with everyone, particularly on this podcast. I really do appreciate it. Wish you all the very best. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. See you in the future.
Thank you. I'd like to thank you for joining me in this very fascinating conversation I had with Anders today. It's an incredible glimpse that he provides into the future, and I'd encourage you to read around the subject and certainly to look at his website and consider purchasing one of his books. Absolutely fascinating, and you will not be disappointed at exploring this subject further. Next week, we do have another very interesting guest and clinical problem to review, and I invite you to join me again then. During the podcast series, we will be covering a wide range of topics across many specialty interests. The discussions are not intended as specific medical advice for patients, but as general information only, and reflect the opinions of the guests interviewed. Requests for new topics to be reviewed and comments about the conversation you've listened to are welcomed and may be emailed to manager@gihealth.com.au.